So the second part we're gonna, I guess, finish up with is, and I think, and maybe this is what sort of triggered you asking Anita and I to come and speak. So oh my gosh, I don't know how long ago. I'm going to push it and say 18 years ago or so. Anita, and Anne Marie Hatcher was working at CBU at the time, and she and I always used to go to the Mi'kmaq Regional Science Fairs as judges. And so I can still remember we were walking through the parking lot at the Eskazoni High School, and she said, it would be a really cool course to pull together, would be about the Mi'kmaq calendar. And I thought, yeah, that'd be fun. Where are we ever going to find the time? But that would be fun to do that someday. So, move ahead 20 odd years is, and I think part of it is everyone sort of starts to find their own rhythm and space and things like that, and time even maybe. So the idea was to put together a trial, I'll say a trial run for a biology course that's also so a biology course at CBU, looking at the Mi'kmaq calendar of seasons. So in addition, instead of your sort of the calendar we follow with the months of the year, the Mi'kmaq, they have seasonal calendars about different times, a different way to record time, I'll say. Pardon me. So the way we structured the course, the way I structured the course was every week we might follow the calendar, we might not, because there's not always people available or faculty available to talk about specific seasons. It's because we wanted to have people who were, sort of well-versed and competent in the topic, not just go in and ramble on about it. So what we did is we picked a bunch of topics that we felt would be appealing to students, interesting to students. And then because there were two sessions each week, or two lectures each week for the course, one lecture would be from someone from the university, and the next lecture would be someone from the community. They, ideally they talk about similar things. They might not, but I think when you invite people to come and talk, you sort of expect them, you sort of give them some latitude. So just Anne's probably saying, I never should have invited these guys to come, but really, I think it's important that you welcome people in and let them talk about the things that they're comfortable talking about. So what we did is so we had Mi'kmaq knowledge holders, and Anita and Lindsay, and we had Anita and Lindsay, and oh gosh, I'm trying to think all the different speakers we had. I can't even think of them all now, but I do have a list. But anyway, so we invited people from various communities, Mi'kmaq communities, to come and talk about different topics. Basically said, here's the Mi'kmaq calendar. Is there something specific you'd like to talk about in the calendar, or something related to this, or just to share your knowledge, your wisdom about science and Indigenous knowledge in general. So, and then we had CBU faculty, and originally I was just going to invite biology faculty, but then I had people come in and talk, like Andrew Reynolds, who's a philosophy professor at CBU, to talk about what is science. And so the pairing for Andrew talking one day about what is science was that same week Anita talked about, what is Indigenous knowledge, what is traditional ecological knowledge. At the time when the course was being offered, there was the moderate livelihood discussion, or I don't know what the word is, fiasco, I picked the word, down Southwest Nova, all that controversy going on. So I asked Heidi Marshall, who was a colleague of mine at CBU. So she's a lawyer, she's from Boileaudeck, lives in Membertou now, and asked her if she could come in and discuss this with the students. So because this class had Indigenous students and non-Indigenous students and international students, it had sort of everybody, like someone from everywhere kind of thing. And I thought it would be a really neat chance for students and me as well to learn, from someone who knows about this stuff instead of reading it on Twitter or Facebook. So Heidi came in and talked about, treaty rights and just what the treaties represent and the wording of the treaty, things like that. So and it was really fun to invite to have. So we veered a little bit from the calendar from time to time. Then we also did things, they had assignments about, reading papers about climate change or Nadugalan, this idea, take what you need, share what you have. What is knowledge overall? What is traditional knowledge? What is science? Those kinds of things. So we sort of didn't necessarily just do the calendar. That was the original version of it, but I don't know if anyone ever follows everything exactly as you plan. This is the calendar, and I'm going to pass it over to Anita in a second. But this is the Mi'kmaq calendar that was put together years ago when CBU had a program, Integrative Science is what it was called, and the idea behind it was Albert Marshall and Rodina Marshall and Cheryl Bartlett were sort of the three pillars of it, among other elders and people like that involved into the discussion. And the idea behind this is looking at, the degree behind it was looking at indigenous knowledge and Western science, at the same time, and not trying to say one is better, not necessarily even to compare one another, but just to get a better understanding of how the knowledges, how that knowledge is approach nature and understandings and things like that. And, as Cheryl or Albert used to say, this is how we tell our story. So this is a product of the two-eyed seeing that everybody hears about. And so we tried to have those conversations in the classroom as well. So we had discussions around two-eyed seeing and those similar type topics. So this is the calendar, and you guys can have a look at it if you wish. I asked, so this is something actually Lindsay was going to speak to, but Lindsay isn't feeling well, so he wasn't able to come this evening. So I asked Anita to fill in, and she's not going to necessarily talk about the calendar in front of you as much as some of her own traditional practices that she's willing to share. So I'll pass it over to you, Anita.
Thanks, Rod. Yeah, that was Lindsay's project there. But what my knowledge is is just looking at the springtime, when you look out in the lake. And I teach this to my children, and my grandchildren, whatever, that I learned this from my mother-in-law as well. When she looks out in the bay, she'll see a stream of milk, like a Milky Way or whatever. And she would say, oh, the fish are coming in. And it's time to set your nets out or whatever. And same thing in the fall, the fish are coming in. So, you get ready for the seasons, harvesting, I do a lot of harvesting during the summertime. Springtime, you got the sap coming out of the trees, whatever else. And you start your maple syrup, and then it's almost time to pick the bark, birch bark. You got the medicine in the birch bark, but the birch bark, it's harvested in June. It peels off easy off the birch trees, and that's used for porcupine quill baskets. And then there's the birch bark. Then there's the sweetgrass season comes. The sweetgrass season is from a couple of months in July, and then I pick it in July, and some people pick it in August, but sometimes I wait till late September to pick it. And that goes on the porcupine quill basket. Then the porcupine comes in the fall. And that's the when you start picking porcupines off the road. A lot of times you'll see a dead porcupine. It's not going to stay there very long, because another Mi'kmaq person will pick it up and take it home and pick the quills off it. Not necessarily to go out and hunt the porcupine or throw a blanket on it, but then basically a lot of them do it, because I missed out a lot, on porcupine quills, because I used to make porcupine quill baskets. So you got your birch bark in the June, you got your sweetgrass, in July, and then you got your porcupine in October. So you're all set for the winter. What you do is back in the days, my mom used to make them. They make porcupine quill baskets, and they're valued like an inch is like $300, probably about $300, maybe an inch today. They're a lot of money. So and then you got the wood to make baskets, whatever. Everything's all to do with the calendar. And spring seasons, you got the frog, they start croaking, whatever else, and you start getting ready for all your harvesting seasons, whatever, eggs and whatever else. What else? The medicines, I'm into herbal medicines. I make a lot of medicines, the cold and whatever else. I harvest all the red clovers and burdock root, thistles and stuff like that. I collect them all and dry them up and make sure that they're cleaned out, whatever else, and I just preserved them for the winter. And some of the elders, they get sick down home, whatever, and I'll make them a little brew, and just be careful what medicines that they take. So I would ask them first, because I do my research before, make sure that nobody gets sick from these medicines. But that's my my info on the calendar, what I do, during the whole year, get prepared. And then we have our feast, the end of January, like all the people in our community get together, like, you know, they did their harvesting, like, you know, a lot of people have salmon in the freezer, maybe a trout, deer or moose, whatever. And we all get together at the end of January. That's coming up very soon. And anybody's more than welcome to come, but not right now, pandemic. I guess we can't do this. It's going to be different. So, you know, we haven't done anything last year. We were like, oh my gosh, like, what do we do? So we can't do that no more. So we'll just have to wait till the pandemic passes, I guess. But like, we've been doing it for a number of years, as far as I can remember. Like, you know, people get together and we all share stories, sit around, like, you know, in community hall, and, you know, who got what, who's the best cook. Like, you know, chefs are doing their best to top off the other chef. But anyway, thank you.
And then again, this was something Lindsay, we were hoping Lindsay was going to speak to, but like I said, he wasn't able to make it. And Lindsay would have, Lindsay talks a lot. He's like me. He would have been able to fill a lot of time. But anyway, but I think the take home for us, and Anita and I have talked back and forth about this. And in fact, just before Christmas, we were meeting with a fella from Ingenium, you know, from the Canada Museum of Industry or Science. I forget. I can't remember now. Will either way, but I mean, what people seem to be surprised by, and I think we take great pride in it, is just our partnerships, the research we do, we share with our education initiatives, and ultimately we respect each other, our knowledge, our time. We make time for each other. You know, Anita comes to campus sometimes. I go to Bulladeck sometimes, or whoever else we're working with. So I'm not 100% sure what Lindsay I was going to say about some of this stuff, but anyway, but when the long and short of it is we've been working together a long time, and I think a lot of it is because we do appreciate what each other does and knows and shares and brings to the table. So, and this final slide is actually this is Soldiers Cove. It's a spot that's kind of near and dear to Anita and I both. It's where my wife and my mother-in-law is from, and it's also the body of water that borders the community where my wife is from in Soldiers Cove, and Anita's community of Bulladeck. So
And you
it's
can see
literally
my
right in the
oyster leaves
middle.
from here.
What's that, Anita? Sorry?
You can see my oyster leaves from there.
Yeah, you absolutely can.